Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this Reset 2022 year in review, if you will. I mean, there's still a month to go. I am filming this on November 24th, and I'm just going to call this all done and dusted. I mean, there is nothing that's going to significantly change in the next month, so I'm pretty sure of that. So, at the end of last year, I had recorded a video discussing my intentions for 2022, what I just called like just a reset because 2021 was such shit. And my plan was to give quarterly updates as this year went on. And I think I posted one update, but ultimately it just didn't go as planned because we had a major life event of moving into a new home. And so ever since July, well, more like June, moving and then getting our own condo on the market for sale. All in all, I am pretty content with the effort that I made with these intentions. And so I'll just go over what I had planned and talk a little bit about how that worked out. So in terms of physical health, my intention was to, for 5 days a week, engage in at least 15 minutes of physical activity. And that didn't have to be all at once. It could have been broken out throughout the day, whether that be walking or stretching or taking a class or just whatever, doing my PT exercises. Only 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes, 5 days a week. Well, I think I averaged more like maybe 3 to 4 days a week, depending. And I feel okay about that. Again, just with the move, change in schedule, figuring out the new gym and that schedule. It was just a lot in terms of, it was a lot of change in terms of my physical routine, and I have the space here to do things at home, and it just there are just days it didn't happen. And I was hoping that this would be a good motivation for me to be better about my physical therapy exercises, and wasn't at all. So I mean, I think that this is an intention that I am certainly going to keep for 2023. But an average of 3 to 4 days, I think that's pretty good. I'm okay with that. Mental health. So my intention was to meditate for at least 108 breaths once a day. So or 108 beads around mala necklace. I started out okay and then ultimately realized, which I think I touched on in my quarterly update, I realized it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't working out. It almost felt like a chore. It felt forced. The tool that was working for me, has been working, continues to work, is my daily tarot readings and daily draws, things like that. Just working with the tarot, using the tarot, an oracle. That has been the form of meditation that has been most effective. And then, when dealing with a certain anxiety, especially being in the car, because I have driving anxiety due to having been in a few accidents that were not my fault. It just makes me nervous now to drive. And then also just even being a passenger seat where I have no control. So I have found that mala beads do work for when I'm in the passenger seat. And then when I'm actually driving, there is this little wooden protective Ganesha charm that a friend sent me as part of a protection spell for when I am driving in the car, since I am such an accident magnet. And so I've just kind of been holding on to that as I drive, which is easy to do, and it's actually helped a lot. Okay, this is probably what y'all are most interested in, which is the tarot and divination intentions. So my first intention for at least the first half of the year was to learn the Thoth. And I will say that I have completed that intention, or I fulfilled that intention. It stretched over half a year, and that is fine. But the whole idea was that, I mean, the first half would be kind of more dedicated and intense focus. I don't know if that's maybe the right description, but so I completed that, and my version of completing a study round one for Thoth is that I had a few books. I focused predominantly on the Duquette book and the original, Thoth deck, and reading up on all the cards, really, and just kind of studying tarot, the Thoth in broader strokes, right? And so I did buy 2 more books in addition to the Duquette book to supplement. And then I also bought a larger version of the Thoth, because I had a mini version that I had begun study with, and it was just too small for my old eyes. And then I also bought the Millennium Thoth Tarot, which is basically a modernized clone, if you will, to kind of spice things up and make things feel a little more fun, because Lady Frida Harris's work just does not resonate with me. So I feel like I completed that. I fulfilled that intention. The next intention was to do a round 2 study of Marseille and to practice that reading style more. And I fulfilled that also. I worked with the Bendoff book, and I used the Tarot Siren, where I basically wrote keywords on there. I've shown that deck on my channel a few times, where I've written the keywords on the actual cards. And I like how that turned out. I found that very helpful. So at this point, I feel like I am done studying both reading styles, both the Thothy Thoth and the Marseille. I'm at a point where I don't feel a desire to do any future deep dives with it. I'm content where I am with what I've learned. The next intention that I had in terms of tarot divination, so this was going to be more towards the second half of the year, and that was to complete a course in either astrology or Lenormand, and that did not happen at all. I decided instead to restart my Korean courses. So that took up my time, and I knew that adding another course just wouldn't be in my best interest. So I chose to make my focus on my Korean language lessons. The third intention that I had was to use only the decks in my collection as of the end of 2021. This wasn't a no-buy. I was permitted, I had permitted myself to buy any deck I want. However, the rule was that I wouldn't be able to use those decks until next year, 2023. Now, exceptions were anything that I would acquire as a result of, or for the purposes of, the 3 Girls, 1 Deck live series that I do with Heather and Sarah from Sunset Bot Tarot, or gifts from people, or gifts to myself. So those were the exceptions. Otherwise, not able to use any other deck purchases, right? I don't know if I'd call this one a success. So I did receive several decks as gifts or in trade. And so that meant I could use them, and I did. I bought three decks for myself that I had called birthday gifts to myself and used those. And, it just came to a point where I started feeling like I was just conveniently labeling things gifts to myself or conveniently bending or expanding the exceptions so that I could, use a deck that I had acquired this year. So I don't know. And that certainly took the edge off, right? Having these new decks to play around with. So then, buying decks wasn't necessarily, or rather, stopping myself from mindlessly buying lots of decks. I don't know that that was as challenging as it would have been had I not, received such thoughtful gifts from people. And I'll confess that, as of now, it's like I've disregarded the rule. I mean, I just got the Brother to Brother Oracle from a Kickstarter that I had backed. I did not anticipate getting that deck until next year. But Levi, the creator over at Masculine Intuition Readings, he was able to deliver much sooner, and it was such a smooth and seamless Kickstarter campaign, and I just started using that deck because I just had to. I had to. And then there was another deck that I bought just a week or two ago, and I have started using that too. So let me just give you a rundown of the decks, and I'm not going to go through each specific one, but just in terms of decks that I'll give you a rundown of decks that I bought / gifted to myself for my birthday / created. So then, of course, the ones I created, I definitely used those and felt that those two were an exception as well, right? So, Notorious JBG Tarot and JBG Oracle, I did use those quite often this year. They were the ones that I created. The Grimalkin's Curious Cats, I bought that and have only used it for my friend's boyfriend. So, I don't know, does that count? Millennium Thoth Tarot and the larger original Thoth, I bought those for study. So I use those. Where does that fall, right? Hush Tarot, Blythe Tarot, and the Masters of the Universe Tarot, birthday gifts to myself. The Callow Tarot is the one that I just bought recently, and then the Brother to Brother Oracle that was an early was a Kickstarter that was fulfilled early and delivered early. So all in all, that is 10 total decks, right? 10 total decks. And within those 10, I felt like I was, again, making exceptions for myself, exceptions, excuses. So the decks that I received as a part of a trade or as a gift, that totaled 13 decks. And 2 were for the purposes of review, 2 were trade. So I don't know. Even with all of the allowances that I gave myself for this particular intention, I do still feel like it was helpful in keeping me more mindful about my purchases and the decks that I was bringing in through with my own money, right? So I think this is kind of a mindset going forward into 2023 that I may or may not still adopt. I don't know. Um, I have to think about that. Finally, the last category was creativity slash wild card. So I only had two intentions. The first one being uh, quite significant, and that was to finish my manuscript revisions and to either pitch to agents or self-publish. And I did not accomplish that. I talked about that in my quarter update, which is that I realized I outgrew my novel. And I mean, I was serious about this too. As I have already said, I had hired a creative coach, like a creativity coach for accountability purposes. I mean, I was effing serious about it. So you can imagine kind of how like crushed I was when I came to the epiphany that I had outgrown this novel that I had poured so much of my time and energy into over the last few years. I am still um, processing that, even now. It's been almost a year, and even now thinking about it, I just feel all sorts of feelings. Feeling better now than I did when I, first came to that realization, and it was almost like a quarter life, midlife crisis. How old am I now? And then, so for my second intention, I just labeled it as wild card. I wanted to do something else in the kind of creativity project department, didn't know what that was, and I figured I would just leave that open. And I would say that I have fulfilled that in terms of having created two decks this year, continuing to create YouTube content. Yeah, so I'm good with that. All in all, it was all right. I'm feeling all right about all this, and I'm thinking about next year already, and I will be writing that down, um, and hopefully next year I will. It'll feel a little more. I mean, I felt this was doable. I did feel this was doable. I do know that just the move, having to move and having to sell our old place and all that, it was just such a big adjustment that did put a bit of a wrench in things. And so next year, not having that obstacle, or I don't know, not having that event to contend with, um, perhaps my intentions will turn out more to be more, I don't know, successful. We shall see. Thank you so much for sticking with me for this long. If you have, I hope that you all are doing well. As the Christmas slash Yule season comes upon us, I know that it can be can be a stressful time for many. If you're already feeling that stress, as I am, just sending you virtual hugs. We'll get through this. Anyway, until the next time, much love. Take care.